What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Witty Sports Talk for another video today. It's been a little bit since I posted a previous video. I think it was about F1 was my last video a couple weeks ago. But the AP poll for college football just dropped today. I've got in front of me Georgia #1, Ohio State 2, and Oregon 3. And so I thought, you know what? Football less than a month away, end of August 31st, September 1st, that time frame. I think Florida State kicks off August 24th over in Ireland against Georgia Tech or something like that. And so, I thought, you know what, let's get into it. College football is almost here, my favorite time of year, entering the fall. And I'll predict the Power 4 conferences. We'll go SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12. Just who I think is going to make it to the conference championship game, who I think is going to win the conference, and then we'll kind of cap it there. I'm not going to go through all the records or anything like that. I'm not going to say who's going to the college football playoff, although I'm sure that'll come up offhand, but it's not the point of this video, just who I think is going to win the conference. And with the AP poll dropping today, I thought, you know what, let me dive into it and give my opinion on it. About Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, and Florida State round out the top 10. Had it on my phone right there. So, without further ado, let's see who wins the Power 4 conferences this year. All right, to start off, we're going to go right into the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma coming over to the SEC from the Big 12 for this season. 16 teams now. And for me, I kind of think the SEC is just in like three tiers right now. You have the top three teams, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. That's just them saying, I'm not saying that's the order or anything right now, but I'm just saying like those three teams are the three best teams. And there's a middle pack in there that has, Missouri, LSU, Ole Miss. Who else we got in there? Tennessee, maybe Oklahoma, maybe A&M. Those are sort of the teams in that middle pack. And then the bottom tier teams, which is, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Florida this year because they have a tough schedule. And then, Arkansas, those sort of teams that really just have no chance right now. They're just not built to win right now, and or their schedule is just terrible for them. And so those teams just aren't ready to compete. But that middle pack, if everything goes right, and even maybe a couple losses from the top three teams, those teams in the middle, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU maybe, Tennessee can sneak in to the SEC championship game. But with Alabama, Texas, and Georgia, the top three teams, I think those are the three teams really to look out for this year, which isn't, a crazy statement or anything breaking news. But those are the three teams I think could switch back and forth to see who's going to go to Atlanta, because obviously this year there's no conference divisions, there's no East and West. It's just the two best records from conference play go into it. And so I kind of want to just dive in, and I'll just go kind of team by team in a sense of where I think their losses can come. And, not exactly go game by game, but just where losses can come and who I think is going to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship. All right, like I said, with the three-tier system, I'll start at the top of the three-tier system with Georgia, Bama, and Texas. I think Georgia, obviously, they have a kind of a tougher schedule than usual this year. And obviously they play at Texas, at Bama, and then at Ole Miss, which is three tough games. I think they only drop one of those. I do maybe think they will drop one, just because it's going to be tough to win every single one of those games. They play Bama as DeBoer's first SEC game at Bama. And so for his first game into the conference, I think Georgia can win that game. To get the bias out of the way, I graduated from Georgia, and so I'm a fan of them. But I'll try and stay, even keel as far as my prediction with them this season. I mean, they were the #1 team in the AP poll. They're an odds-on favorite to win the national championship, so anything of me saying good about them isn't really a bias. I guess it is in a sense, but it's not like I'm, overrating them or anything like that, I hope, from your guys' perspective. But I do think Georgia maybe slips up one of those games at Texas. I think is definitely the biggest test of the season for them. I think DeBoer, his first game in Alabama, that could be, just a tough shake, really, for him, having to play Kirby Smart as his first game. And then at Ole Miss is tough just with how offensive Ole Miss is, but they lack defense, and that's why I think Georgia can win that game, is because, defense is really Georgia's strength, and then this year the offense will almost be on par with the defense, and I just don't think Ole Miss plays enough defense for them. So I think Georgia maybe with one loss against Texas, but if not, they could go undefeated, and I do have them into the conference championship. Alabama and Texas, I both have them possibly losing 2 games. I've got, with Alabama against Georgia, and then they play at Tennessee. That's a tough environment. We saw them lose there, 2 years ago with the game-winning field goal. So that's always a tough environment there, and we'll see if DeBoer can adapt well to the SEC. He's recruited really well, which is surprising to some. I don't think Alabama's going to fall off to be 7-5 or anything stupid, just because they have kind of a favorable schedule minus against Georgia, Tennessee. So those 2 games, but even with those 2 losses, they could get in to the SEC championship game. Along with Texas, I have them losing 2 games, and I have 3 potential losses for them with the OU game, which is the rivalry game, obviously, and then against Georgia the very next week. I do think they drop one of those games. Either going to be looking ahead to Georgia, or just the fact that it's 2 huge games back-to-back is always tough to win. So I think, either against Oklahoma or against Georgia, they drop one of those games, and they play at A&M the final game of the season. That's a game where Texas, I don't really know if they want to be in that spot, because they're going to probably have to win that game to get into the SEC championship game. And then A&M, if everything goes right, maybe they're playing to get into the SEC championship game. I doubt it, but you never know with the new coaching staff and everything. Maybe a bit more calmer, town that is, not everything being hectic with Jimbo Fisher anymore. So with Elko there, I think that A&M will be more steady of a ship. So if everything goes perfect for A&M, maybe they're playing against the SEC championship game. But if not, they're still playing maybe to just ruin Texas's season, which I think is almost a worse spot for Texas to be in. And so I do think they drop that game. Also, just the adaptation of the SEC, the grind every single week. Even if you're going at Mississippi State, at Arkansas, especially, they don't have to this year, but at Florida. Even though the teams aren't good, those are tough games. At Missouri. Those are tough games to go to week in, week out with the physicality. And for Texas, I think maybe they'll drop one of those offhanded games where, we've seen in years past with some teams that you just get caught off. It's just a bad week, and you can't afford that in the SEC like you could in the Big 12, where your team was just far superior all over the field. And so I do think Texas drops 2 games, maybe 3, and that can lead them to maybe not be in the SEC championship game. So my SEC championship is, once again, Georgia, Alabama. I do think even with Texas coming in after making it to the College Football Playoff last year, the 2 strongholds, the 2 powers make it back into the championship game. Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, LSU, those teams are almost there, but I do think they drop maybe 1-2 games that prevent them from making it into the SEC championship game. This year could have a 2-loss team like Bama or something, maybe even Georgia, into the SEC championship game, and Ole Miss with their slightly weaker schedule than other teams. They really, the only loss you could see them having is, against Georgia, maybe at LSU. And so they could make it in. Tennessee, I have here, maybe against Georgia or against Oklahoma, both away games. Those are tough. Missouri's at A&M, at Bama. Those are tough games. LSU's at A&M, against Ole Miss, against Bama. So, all those teams in there could make it, but there's just a possibility for them to also lose 2 or 3 games. And so with that, we'll go Georgia, Bama in the SEC championship game, and then I'll take the homer route and say Georgia wins the SEC championship. Now moving over into the Big Ten, hopefully you forgive me for my bias and my homer pick there with Georgia, but I really think the SEC is just up for grabs this year. In the Big Ten, though, I think it's just a 2-horse race. It's Ohio State and it's Oregon. Everyone else is kind of in that second pack: Penn State, Michigan, USC, Iowa, Washington, Wisconsin. Just all those teams in there, I don't know if they have, they don't, as much talent as Ohio State and Oregon. Both those teams, I think, maybe could end up with a loss, but it's to each other. So one of those teams I do think will be undefeated. Ohio State, the only loss I see them having is at Oregon. That's a tough game. And then Oregon, against Ohio State, could lose. And then Boise State, not a conference game, so it's not going to matter as much. But Boise State, second week of the season, the Broncos, they're kind of like App State. They kind of roll in there, non-Power 5, and upset some teams. So you got to watch out for that game. Penn State also, with the new alignment in the Big Ten with no divisions either, they get an easy ride out. maybe only one loss this season against Ohio State, maybe at USC, but USC with a lack of defense. Penn State could also make it to the Big Ten Championship. They're kind of that third team, kind of like Ole Miss or Missouri, where it's like maybe you're not as talented as the top teams, but with an easier schedule, you can sneak your way in there. So Penn State on the outside looking in, but I do think it's possible for the Nittany Lions to make it to the Big Ten Championship, not having to play both Ohio State and Michigan this year. And so I think, their schedule kind of gives a lenient path for them. And of course, they can finally make the playoff because they have been on the outside looking in that 5 or 6 spot quite a few times. But now with the 12-team playoff, you'll have plenty of teams from the SEC, plenty of teams from the Big Ten. And I think Penn State is going to be a huge beneficiary of that happening. So into the Big Ten Championship game, Ohio State and Oregon, I do think it will be anyway. We'll pick Ohio State. I'll keep it in the Big Ten. Just that they have the most talent in the country, like statistically, however you want to look, numbers-wise, whatever the formula is that college football uses, and like based off recruits and all this nonsense, where like they have the highest talented ranked team in the country, and their odds are the same with Georgia to win the national championship. So we'll go Ohio State. Dan Lanning has proven to maybe struggle a little bit in the big games. He lost to Washington last year twice. Kind of struggles. He struggled against Georgia's first year there. So in the big games, he does kind of struggle. So Ryan Day getting back on the winning track as far as winning Big Ten championships. I think Ohio State takes it. Both those teams, and probably Penn State, though, those three make it to the college football playoff from the Big Ten. Moving to the ACC now, and then the Big 12. These are going to be a lot quicker because they're a lot easier, I would say, to predict in a sense. FSU is just so much better than everyone else in the conference. I mean, you have FSU, and then you have the second tier, which is maybe like Clemson, NC State, and Miami. Like those are kind of the only 3 teams I can think of that are maybe challenging. Miami, though, went 7-6 last year. They had a great recruiting class and a great transfer class coming in, but Cristobal, for whatever reason, just hasn't got it to work down there, down in Miami, and I just have no reason to see why they will explode and be this, a top 10 team this year. I see a lot of places where they're predicted to go to the championship with FSU. But I'll take it different. I'm going to go NC State out of those 3 teams there. Maybe a little surprising. I think they came in like 24th in the AP poll to start the season off. They have been playing better recently. They're on the come up there in Raleigh. And, they have against Clemson. That's an early season game. And I honestly think whoever wins that game, it's at Clemson. So maybe it's the time to catch Clemson out with Dabo Swinney and everything. So whoever wins that game really between Clemson and NC State, I do think will go to the ACC championship against Florida State. But either way, Florida State is winning. They're going undefeated. I think they will go actually undefeated the whole season because the only loss maybe on their record is Notre Dame, but I think they can beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame is always overrated, in my opinion, and that's just how it is. And so, yeah, I think Florida State can go undefeated. Maybe NC State, maybe Clemson in the conference championship. I think Florida State takes the ACC and goes undefeated once again, and this time gets into the college football playoff. Now, lastly, into the Big 12, a new Big 12 with the deletion, the dispersion, the end of the Pac-12 with Utah, Colorado, a whole bunch of other teams coming over, Arizona coming over from the Pac-12 into the Big 12. And Utah is the preseason favorite. Straight into the new conference, straight into the conference championship game they go. And they're the clear favorite in the Big 12. The physicality of that team, I think, is really going to run riot in the Big 12. Oklahoma State right below them. Then you have like West Virginia, Arizona, Kansas State, kind of those teams battling it out for the 3 through 5 spot. UCF, Kansas, they're on the come up. Gus Malzahn in Orlando. You never know with him. They actually did pretty well last year for their first time in the Big 12 in a Power 5, so I can only see UCF improving. But yeah, I think Utah and Oklahoma State are the 2 best teams by far, and I think that Utah wins the Big 12 there. I don't know why my hat just felt really funny on my head there, but anyway, hopefully it looks okay. I don't know, but I think Utah wins the Big 12, and maybe 1 or 2 other teams, depends on how well Oklahoma State and or Arizona can do record-wise if they can sneak in to the college football playoff. But yeah, Utah is my last Power 4 conference champion, and I think they adapt really well into the Big 12 as a new member. All right, that is my Power 4 conference champions. I got Georgia beating Alabama in the SEC championship game. I've got Ohio State beating Oregon in a that's a tough, that really can go back and forth, to be honest. In the Big 10, I've got Florida State beating whoever they face. I'll say NC State in the ACC championship game. And I've got Utah beating Oklahoma State in the Big 12. So, yeah, I mean, they're not really like outlandish picks. There's nothing crazy about my takes here, but just thought I'd give my opinion on it. Super excited for college football to come back. Cannot wait. Thank goodness it's starting up again. The best time of the year. And just looking forward to a ton of great football, a ton of great games. And with the new college football playoff 12 teams, not really a fan of that expansion as a whole, but I think it'll have a lot more meaning coming down the end of the season with the Group of 5 team getting in and everything like that. So cannot wait for that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're excited about college football as well. And until next time, have a good one.